Welcome boys and girls, Costin here with Lokhir, Fellheart of the Dark Elves, and in this video I'm going to show you the path to Naval Supremacy when playing as him. When you start a campaign, you want to fight your initial 2 battles over here in the plains of Zen. You want to capture these elements, you want to get slaves as a post-battle loot option, you may even want to loot and occupy this element. But the important thing here is you want to use those slaves to start getting access to 2 things. 1, you want to get access to Dark Shards, and 2nd, you want to get access to Black Ark Corsairs with handbows. The reason you go for the handbow version is that the dual wield version is great against melee units, but they lack the armor piercing needed against Cafe, and you will be dealing with Cafe. On top of that, you also want to get the 2 masters that you have available if you own the Shadow and the Blade DLC. And we even want to move Lokhir a bit further along right here, and that is going to be turn 1. We can also construct some other things, get that to tier 2, all that good stuff. Just make sure when you're moving right here, the way you move is going to be relatively important in how you can handle this campaign. You can spend a lot of time dealing with this Vampire Coast faction that you started war with, but that is, let's just say, not an ideal path. And the reason it's not an ideal path is because the way the terrain is in this area in the Jade River Delta, you can end up wasting a lot of the precious time that you don't have. And the reason I say you don't have is because you may not care about it, but the Lefanar is marching on Karankar. And the faster you can gain access to Karankar, the better off you'll be. But that is a choice. Do you care about Karankar? Do you not care about Karankar? From my point of view, taking control of Karankar is a really useful thing in your campaign to focus on. But it should be pointed out that it is going to require you moving your ass fast. And the reason it's going to require that is because, well, the multiple objectives that you do have in this campaign. Another objective that we do have over here is to take Shillong. So while we're rushing to try and get as many as we possibly can from the perspective of Karankar, we also have that specific problem, if you will, of ensuring that we are also getting Shillong. Though you can wait with that, but I would advise not waiting for too long. The reason I would advise against waiting for too long is simply because if you wait too long, then what's going to happen is Xiao Ming is going to confederate it. And look, your objective in this campaign is not to end up fighting Cafe. In fact, fighting Cafe is probably the single worst decision you could make in this entire campaign structure. Pay attention to what you're dealing with right here, because you might be caught by that army. You want to ensure, right there, that your fleet right there is not getting caught. You could just spend money to, instead of upgrading your main force, you could spend the money on focusing on the unit recruitment for that Black Ark force. But the thing is, you still want Shillong and you still want those units. So you gotta be mindful of that. So our objective, the way I see it, the path I see it, I'm just gonna use toggle file before. What you wanna do in this campaign is you wanna jump from Chiangmai to Jiangxi to Nechang into Xiama's Rest, and then finally take Shillong. You will, and you also will sell Shimai back to the dead fleet, flag fleet, in order to get the peace agreement. You can also acquire a Black Ark over here at this port to give you artillery support for some of the battles that you will fight here. That is the most obvious and clearest path possible for Lokhir to achieve success, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. But before I do it, and there's going to be a lot of battles, the battle mechanics are simple. Remember, you're on the timer. If you don't care about this, you can do whatever you want. My recommendation actually is, if you don't necessarily care too much about carrying car and are willing to go for the harder path, you can always just end up playing defensive around here and going to war against Snitch. But dealing with Skaven is its own messy situation, so bear that in mind. Now, one of the things I would like to mention, however, is that Cafe is something of a nightmare to deal with regards to siege battles. So if you are ever going to fight Cafe, it is generally speaking better to fight them on the battlefield. The reason is, Cafe units are very sturdy, but they don't necessarily, a lot of them early on don't necessarily do a lot of damage, at least in melee. Their range can do a lot of damage, so you fighting them in sieges is kind of playing to their strengths, even if the AI is really bad, but the leadership benefit they get, as well as their sturdiness and high morale, makes them a nightmare to deal with in an offensive siege when you're the attacker. So it's best to lay a trap, lay bait, try and ambush some, all that kind of stuff. Like, for instance, over here, there's an entire army. Now, you could, of course, ignore all of that and instead just go deal with the vampire coast. But again, you still need Shilong, and the clock is ticking on Alain, so it's generally speaking a good idea to deal with this. And on top of that, Lokhir does have the ability of traveling to a Black Ark with 100% movement range. So when this army is marching towards this particular sea lane, I will be able to just teleport to Lokhir once he has Shilong. In fact, at this point, one of the things I could do is make my life a bit easier and get a peace agreement and tons of money with them. But I kind of want an extra settlement. Now, once you have secured this situation, and in this case I made the mistake of allying the Jade Custodians, and Alain move faster than me, all that. Things happen. They occur. You can't control every single aspect of a campaign. That's just not how that thing works. Money, at least, is not really a problem, and the red blades are mine. Now, you have a choice over here with regards to how you're going to move forward given everything. You can try and take this entire province. You can also try and deal with the situation over with Aislinn. One very crucial point about that, by the way, with regards to Aislinn, you don't need to defeat him. You need to gain the entire province. So in this case, he's actually just been sitting there AFK doing nothing. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. This is like literally the only thing I have installed right here is Toggle Flag of War, so it's not a mod issue. It's just the AI being the AI in the game. And sometimes that does happen. So we get the trade agreement after beating the living crap out of them. And bear in mind, with regards to all of this, that we do also have other things to take into consideration, like Snitch. We're at war with him at this point, so we have to tread very carefully with regards to all of that as well. Ideal circumstances right here is this is the part, though, however, where you do start steamrolling in a campaign. The point where you really do end up dominating the entire campaign structure. But you gotta be careful, because things can still happen. One of the things I would, however, point out about Lokhir, if I can actually move that camera around to actually see where the hell... well, I can't see it yet. But one of the things I would point out is your Black Arks. They can attack via the sea, but they cannot attack via the land. However, they can recruit a lord to attack via the land. So that is a factor that is really worth understanding. And also, you don't really need to defeat Aislinn yourself, so to speak. You can always just send the Black Ark, because he doesn't necessarily have the level of power capability necessary to be able to stand up to you. And that's also an important factor to take into consideration when you're dealing with things right here. So the journey is complete, but we're not really in a rush to deal with that situation right there. And we have tons of money. So again, no rush. Time is not necessarily against us. We have all the time in the world. And another thing also worth saying, you can use Black Arks to recruit units and heroes. So make good use of that kind of capability, because you will want to make use of that capability. And don't forget, naval markets do also exist as well. So whenever you're in a bind in terms of financials, and you will be, you can always use naval markets to get ahead of your opponent. So this is the real power that Lokhir does end up having in his campaign: scalability. Whatever you choose to do. I mean, I admit it probably would have been the better choice had I chosen to ultimately go after Snitch early on. That way I would have potentially gotten all the slaves I wanted. But flip side of that is it delays you in Sheet Long. And also, if you go for Snitch, you end up suffering another cost as well with regards to all of it. So you are going to fight a lot of different wars. You are going to fight a lot of different battles. And that is, by the way, a very vital aspect of this particular campaign. I don't know where they've gone to. Well, wherever they've gone to kind of doesn't necessarily matter. They've just screwed off. Vision is always one of those things that can annoy. Now, in this case, if I do trigger this war, I will be at war with Aislinn and his lackeys right there. But there's a way, so to speak, to deal with that situation right over there. Before things get unfortunate, let's just say. Money-wise, well, you got a lot of vision around the campaign map with a lot of different factions. So if you ever need money, you can go to any number of factions and declare war on their enemies. Dark Elves are good from a diplomatic standpoint, and something that, again, shouldn't be ignored. And also, when you do have a Cathayan ally, which is one of the benefits in this entire context, when you do have a Cathayan ally, you end up in a situation where their caravans, the ones they have, grant you vision around the world, so you can gain even more money. It is a bit cheesy, definitely, well, more than a bit, but it does end up working. So sneer at it all you want, in the end, what works, works. Some people really detest using it like that, but to me personally, I mean, I think the question is, what do you want to do? How far do you want to do it? And once you have secure the DC lanes, once you have your heroes available, once you have everything sorted out, very little can stop you in a campaign after that point. I'm not quite there at that stage right now, but I am getting closer and closer and closer to that stage. And that is one of the more important things to keep in mind here. In fact, I'm even going to accept a peace agreement right here and go deal with Aislinn. Being flexible is what wins the day, because right now the biggest benefit I could have in this campaign is if I teleported to Aislinn directly. And so that's precisely what I'm going to do. Now, who do I sell the territory that I have there? No one. It is a question of juggling balls, so to speak, in this campaign. There is no simple path to victory. There's no easy one that you can pick. You've got a lot of different factions, and you've got a lot of different capabilities and potentials that you have to manage very, very carefully in order to achieve success. I'm actually surprised by the level of capability that they have right there. But maybe I shouldn't be. And actually, I should have just teleported right there. Regardless, we have different means of achieving that. Or you can just region trade till the end of time and get success like that. That is also an option. That one shouldn't ignore right here in a campaign. So what I'd be doing there in that situation, you know, we got Skaven, we're on the edge of the economy, we've got to make a decision. So what I would do is fight this battle right here. Once that battle, there's no way that I'm losing this, and then secure the territory here against Aislinn. And that's just, again, Lokhir's start kind of is tricky and annoying and frustrating in a lot of different ways. But once you get to rank 12, things start moving in a different direction altogether. Because you get that control in all provinces. You get those benefits to Black Ark Corsairs. And there is a reason you may want to get more Black Ark Corsairs with handbows. I like Dark Shards, they're useful. But Black Ark Corsairs with handbows, they can get stock, Vanguard deployment. They can get armor-piercing missile damage 100%. You can get Black Ark growth. You can get Slaver. You can get Lord Recruit rank. So Lokhir may have a questionable start, but once he gets going, there is no force out there that can stop him. Genuinely so. Like, this is the thing about Dark Elves. They're really, really powerful in the early game by default, but once you get those Lord skill lines, once you get the diplomacy sorted out, once you get things going and moving, they are nigh on unstoppable. And that's not something one should dismiss about their kind of capabilities that they do have in a campaign, because people have done that. It hasn't necessarily ended well for anyone that has tried to do that, for instance. So that is a factor to take into account. And money-wise and all that stuff, it's like, oh, do you need money? Boom. Money mostly sorted. Yes, there's, of course, a couple of other things. You know, I need just a bit more, but I would win that battle, go over, secure victory, and maybe I would even be able to recruit some more units here. And then I can launch a pincer movement attack against Niche while trying to secure this territory there. Or I could just teleport Lokhir here, depend on the situation and how I feel like. It's that flexibility that defines this campaign. That is all I have to say. And that flexibility gets even more ridiculous once you get the special sea lanes. I think you do need to own Tides of Torment for that, but I'm not entirely certain. Since I do have all the DLC, so I couldn't tell you really what happens. Stay tuned for more.